Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Bad Baby. And tonight we are so honored to have with us Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And he is in depth of knowledge and experience in the alternative agriculture, physics, and metaphysics. And we will be covering all kinds of screwy Louie stuff tonight, right, Richard?
Well, wherever you'd like to go down that rabbit hole. Actually, there's a large warren down below.
Yeah, well, we were just starting to talk about the new Madrid before the recording started. So
Yeah.
why don't we pick it up from there?
All right. So Putin came out. Russian scientists have predicted, came out on March 6th, that there is going to be a 9.0 on the West Coast, and it's going to affect as far in as the New Madrid fault line. And that means Yellowstone might get involved. Now, a 9.0 is serious. How do they predict that? Back in the early 70s, when I was working military, I was asked to study some work out of Czechoslovakia called cosmobiology. Janov had written a book on the lunar sex cycle of the woman, dealing with the fact that when the moon and the earth and the sun are in a specific geometric alignment at the moment of your birth, it sets up a biological clock inside you for ovulation. And if you move, that clock changes if you move to different parts of the earth. And that had a 1 sigma error coefficient to it. The study that the Department of Interior had me do was an extension of that, where the planet Uranus, Earth, and Sun are in a specific geometric alignment. There was, according to the Russians, a 3 sigma error coefficient of an event happening. That's a 99.99975% probability of an event. And it gave the Department of Interior a new way of predicting earthquakes until suspicious observers and some others started to key off the sun. Now, whether or not it's accurate or not, what I did back in 1975 was I took a 360 at the University of Washington computer, and I vetted back into the 14th century in terms of, is that credible or not, in terms of the position of planetary hours with Uranus, the Earth, and the Sun. And the damn thing was dead on. However, there are no known laws in physics today yet that would account for how the planet Uranus could affect the Earth. But Putin's predictions are based on this older technology called cosmobiology. They used to suggest that when the storm on Jupiter was happening in this way, things on Earth were happening that way. In other words, the physics presumed something meta beyond physics that we don't have in terms of how planetary movement affects life on Earth.
Wow.
It's interesting. You don't know, and we're going to have some real data on the 20th when it occurs or not.
Wow.
Now, a 9.0 is enough to drop the San Andreas fault line running down the coast from I-5 west. And some predictions, including Edgar Cayce and the one that the military uses, Chet Snow, future map of America, comma, Chet Snow, or Navy map. Those are the way you can find what is predicted to be the new landmass after a 9.0. And Department of Homeland Security and FEMA went through here 2 years ago talking about the so-called big one. Now, whether or not that happens, I have no idea. But I'm going to recommend that between now and the 20th, that everybody has at least 3 days of water stashed for everyone in your household, including animals. And it goes downhill from there because you're going to need a replacement plan because a 9.0 will drop the grid. That
Yeah.
means you don't have, you don't have your well water, you don't have your automobile. There is a high likelihood that everything's going to hit the skids. The problem is the two primary things that happen in any disaster usually start with either dehydration and exhaustion before anything else, plague, bandits, food, gangs, going for drugs, whatever. It will be exhaustion and dehydration. That's what happened at Katrina. And you can watch it happen or not and be semi-prepped for it. Food is your least concern at this point because it goes like what Matt Stein, my partner, and I do with these urban survival skills was one, you have 3 minutes for air, 3 days for water, and 3 weeks for food. What's important?
Wow.
I know.
Don't, and
Here
I'll
I
tell
am
you
being
another
a
thing.
bad baby, a grumpy baby. I'm grumpy baby. I liked how you got your name. Did you ever tell your audience how you got your handle?
I've mentioned it a few times, yeah. I
thought
have.
that was very amusing. Was it your older brother? It was your older brother that called you that, a bad baby?
Yes.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be
Yeah,
grumpy. How's that?
and
We'll do
when
that.
he grew up, he used to tell everybody, "What are you pissing her off for? I'd rather fight Muhammad Ali with one hand tied behind my back than mess with her."
I am interested that you brought up Muhammad Ali. That's a good way to go into my primary topic today because I watched that fight when he was still Cassius Clay fighting Sonny Liston, and he hit that roundhouse blow, lifted Liston up in the air and falling flat back out on his back out cold. And yet, on closer inspection, you will say that Ali never even touched Sonny Liston. How does that work? That's why they used to say he threw the fight. He didn't. What we're going to talk about tonight, I hope, if you're interested in, is how magic has now become a primary field of study in advanced physics. And I'm going to suggest there's 3 movies that everybody should say in prep of this talk I'm planning to do. And that's with Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis and DeVoy. They do a 3-movie called Unbreakable, Split, and then Glass, where there are 3 individuals in an insane asylum that think they're superheroes. Now, I have, for the government, witnessed paranormal phenomena where a mother has ripped a car door off to save her daughter in a flaming automobile. Now, everybody says, oh, yeah, that's adrenaline. Yeah, well, that's all well and good, but the adrenaline did not make the bone in her body stronger than steel. So how does that work? And that's why physics today is interested in the fact that all these different altered states that we currently enjoy and are forbidden or taboo or you don't want to go there kind of thing are actually tools in a toolbox for the next stage in the evolution of man's consciousness.
So basically, we can use our minds to get super strength then, right?
That's absolutely correct. And you have done that in times past without noticing it because you're in and out of that state in a brief moment of need. It's like in an altered state using hypnosis. I have a whole book on that, on ESP induction through forms of self-hypnosis, how I trained Navy SEALs to think with their gut, instinct. they had a higher probability survival coefficient than if they worked with logic and thinking processes. And it's
So I
why
must have done that before then, Dr. Richard.
we
Because
all have.
when I would get angry with my brothers, that's why my brother used to say, "Don't piss me off." He goes, because
There it
she would get
is. Yeah.
like super strength.
It's not so much super strength, but the laws of physics in that universe that you're currently enjoying are different. And what I'm doing now is I'm mapping those out like I did 45 years ago using biofeedback equipment and controlling and changing autonomic functions like heart rate, pulse, respiration, brainwave pattern, temperature in my body, and things like that. These were believed not to be true until Andrea Puharich, when he was at SRI, wrote a book called Beyond Telepathy. And that's when we started to realize there was a thing called the parasympathetic nervous system, where you could go into certain altered states and do things you can't do in conscious waking state. Conscious waking state, by some Aborigine groups, see that as a dream state, and that, like Senoi and the Hopi, believe that certain dream states, like lucid dreaming, actually have more content to reality than consciousness does.
So what kind of state do you get in when you're a grumpy baby?
There it is. I get scars on my knuckles from dragging them, just like the Hulk. No, I'm just kidding. I don't need to do that. I'm Dr. Strange. I've got a better way. I'll twist and bend space.
I think that's so cute. You want to steal half of my handle there.
Oh, no, I'm not half your handle. You're going to need a bunch of us all being grumpy to get this place changed. Because as it's going right now, that handbasket they talked about going down into hell, there it is.
Yeah. Okay, I got a quick question for you. The storm that just went across the middle of the United States and then kind of came up towards Michigan and went across us and out of our area.
The hammer, yeah.
Yeah. They called it the cyclone
Yeah,
hurricane.
the hammer. It is still going on. I did radio last month in Winnipeg, and they were at 64 below zero.
Wow.
Winnipeg. Now, what that says to me is it global warming or global cooling? And the correct answer is yes. It's all of it. We're going through a very strange period of cycles. The sun right now is in a solar minimum, and it's going through a portion of space that is got a lot of dark matter. I don't know what dark matter is. I can give you some hand waving, but nobody really understands what dark matter is, except that it's causing the Earth to expand. And the expansion of the Earth, and the Earth is right now 0.6 times larger than during Noah's flood. It has actually expanded from gathering particles. And if you don't think that that is not affecting our plasma core, you know, we have earthquakes going on everywhere now. And some of that is the dark matter that's coming around the sun, because in a solar minimum, the sun does not absorb that as a bullet going through space, but that matter is going around the sun and hitting the Earth. And while
we had a tornado come through Michigan, and it was 1 hour away from me, west of me.
I read about that. It was devastating, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they were showing tonight on the news where this man's mother was in the house. They called her up and said, get to shelter. She stood up out of her chair, looked out the window. There it was. It lit her house right up off the foundation and slammed it back down. And do you know that it broke every window in her house, smashed her house to smithereens, and she or her chair didn't have a scratch on it?
That's God's will. You know,
yes.
I can tell you the Earth must have a day after tomorrow because of the saline problems with the ocean. It has to reboot. How it does it, like in the movies where I burn my Gutenberg Bible, I don't know about that part. I have never been through anything like this, but I can tell you it's all of it. And I don't know what this nonsense is with the UN and the chemtrail. We have one of my SEAL units actually wanted a vet where they were coming from here on the West Coast, and they're coming out of Chilliwack, and they're refueling down at Klamath Falls and going back. And that's our little set. You're in the Midwest. I don't know what's going on there, and I don't know where they're staging it, but they're at 50,000 feet, and I know for a fact there's all kinds of different studies going on besides weather modification. They deployed 2 Thanksgivings ago lithium on Reedsport up in Oregon, up near the coast, up next to Washington State, and to see if they could lock down a small city. They actually used it to deploy to see if they could control a small city unrest. They knocked Reedsport down. Everybody there was sick.
Well, one of the things I'm really curious about is the fact that they've got this big power outage in Venezuela, and it seems to me like all these places that Trump is going, they're knocking the lights out when he's doing his speech. He was having a meeting in the Oval Office. They should turn the lights off. And I'm thinking, what are they doing? And then the one place he was giving
my pay grade, I'm a GS-18, and that means I run my bunker, maritime law. I don't report to anybody above me. It's mine. Now, but I only have certain access to certain levels of intel, and while we gossip and talk, I basically don't really know. I can tell you what I do know. I can tell you that at one time, the Democratic and Republican parties both wanted the same thing for America. They just wanted to do it differently. Today, that's no longer true. We have now nationalism and globalism. And when a Democrat starts advocating violence, I don't get that. And this Ortega girl is creepy when she says we got to get rid of daylight savings time because it's heating the earth up 1 more hour and we don't want that global warming. She actually said that. I can't believe it.
Oh, what about HARP? Can we get rid of HARP?
Well, Trump is a buffoon and kind of scary, but
well, that's what I'm saying. When they turn the lights out, he got the whole audience chanting, "Turn the lights out, turn the lights out." And I thought, what is he doing? Is he trying to tell us our lights are going to go out?
Well, I don't know, and you don't know, but I can tell you, you can do Occam's razor, and I can tell you that nobody is ready for a grid down situation. Matt Stein and I do these urban survival skills because I was a Navy SEAL, and I'm your MacGyver guy. I'm out in the woods doing it, but I don't know. And Matt died Christmas Eve. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was. We thought he was the one who's going to outlive us all. He climbs mountains and he was eating his little Wheaties and whatever. But well, he was on the slopes the day before Christmas Eve skiing, and the next day he was dead as a doornail, massive coronary with an aortic aneurysm. No warning, just gone, just like that.
Wow.
And so, but his paper, 400 Chernobyls, is in my workbook too on can you live off the grid for 30 days. That's just, I have 3 workbooks that go with power tools, the protocols that went for Navy SEALs, and I have outlined your basics that you need to know for medicine, entertainment, those kinds of things. If you have no internet, you have no automobile, you have no electricity, how are you going to do the water?
I did it for 14 days. a
And
year
you
and a
know
half
what wood
ago.
consciousness means, right?
It was pure hell. I could
Well,
not get
you
my
did it though.
vehicle.
Here you are, and you didn't
Well,
lose any weight. You know, there it is.
but you know, I
So
was here
it
all by
isn't about
myself,
food.
and I thought, if this is the way it's gonna be, I don't. You know, the worst part about it was not being able to take a shower or a bath.
Hygiene. You know, hygiene. We assume. Do you know how much water we use just for hygiene? And
Yeah.
yeah, and so that's
I
going to
mean, I was
be
flushing my toilet. I was going down to my pond and chopping a hole in the ice and sticking a 5-gallon bucket down in there and
yeah, yeah.
carrying the water up to the house
You
and
have to
pouring it in the
boil it or
toilet.
whatever you want to do for
Right.
coliform and whatever H. pylori.
Right. You know, but the
Yeah,
thing is, and when the power finally came back on, I got in the
yeah.
shower,
That
then I got in the
16-hour
bathtub,
bathtub,
then I
huh?
got in the
Yeah, hot
shower, then
water.
I got in the bathtub. And the guy from the county called over and asked me if I was, because I was complaining to him about I wanted to take a bath
Which
so
county
bad.
or where were you? What state were you in?
St. Clair, I'm in Michigan.
Oh, Michigan. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where my yeah, my Navy handler tech support is up there in Michigan. So Pearl City.
Yeah.
I guess.
So anyways,
Yeah.
they said I was going to wash my skin off.
Well, you're gonna do that anyway. Do you know how fast you rotate your skin? Well, no, and just
Yeah.
on the scalp
Yeah,
of the
you do.
head,
You should.
you know. Yeah.
But
My
I
gosh.
mean, I couldn't, I just didn't feel like I was clean enough yet. I mean, I couldn't
Yeah.
stop taking
Yeah.
baths,
Yeah.
you know, and that was the worst thing about it all. And I was, you know, I had bottled water here. I was on to my last gallon of water, and I had a portable generator. I ran out of gas, and I couldn't get
A
my truck
portable
out of my.
generator is very expensive, and I'm going to
Yes.
say that if you have a well, for less than $60, you can put a swing on that and put a bicycle over it and pump it out with your bicycle.
Really?
Simple.
Well, I guess I got a bicycle.
Well, that's the deal. You're everybody. That is what is going to kill 50% of the casualties on any event that occurs. It's not going to be the earthquake, and it's not going to be the Golden Boys out looking for drugs and food, ammo,
Well, you know what I
and
did after
weapons.
that is I went on to one of the sites, I can't remember which one it was, and I bought a I bought a portable shower. It's this little square
Yeah, I've seen those.
plastic
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
yeah.
and I thought, well, I'll be darned, you know, I'll get one of them, and then that way at least I can hang it up over my bathtub and have
You
something
know,
run
there
down
are
on me.
laws in the state of Oregon where you're not allowed to collect your rainwater off your roof from your gutters.
Yeah, yeah,
What falls on the state of Oregon belongs to the state of Oregon. It's
yeah.
called
Well,
drainage and water flow,
if
and
there's a grid down, let me see them enforce that one.
yeah. Well, there it is. Florida. You know, that's the problem. There are so many people that will be so compliant going down the same chute. You know, for women and for men, they got two different doors, but they lead to the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
is a metaphor. I'm concerned. It's water will be what is the worst part of it. And the bad news is the New Madrid fault line has 21 Daiichi-like reactors, GE, and they're all leaking now. Imagine what a 9.0 will do there.
yeah, our water's going to be toast.
It takes almost a full year to bring a nuclear reactor down to zero. You just don't turn them off like that. It takes time to turn them down. Even when you turn them off, they're not off. And you need that water coolant for a minimum of 1 year. And nobody is prepared for that. Now, I'm not trying to be creepy. What I'm trying to do is, heads up, start thinking about these things now. And it's not about food, it's about water.
Yeah.
That'll be
Well,
what kills most people. So, what would you like to talk about that makes everybody warm and fuzzy? Chocolate. That's it. We'll talk about chocolate. That cures everything.
Make sure you got a box of chocolate in the house because
Well,
when you get
whenever my
depressed, it'll
girlfriend's
cheer you up.
angry at me, what I do is I usually back off to a safe distance and just throw chocolate at her. That works.
Yeah, I hope it's high quality chocolate.
There it is. Read and weep. Yep. Yeah. Almond Roca.
It's
Oh,
weird
some
because
neat.
I
Yeah.
I have a friend that on Facebook that she's uh, very, very disabled. She has 5 dogs and she barely makes it, and she was starving a couple years ago. So me and another lady sent her some emergency food, and she said to me, "Man, I'd give anything for a chocolate bar." I said, "Well, I can't send you a chocolate bar, but I did send her some hot cocoa, and boy, did that make her
You know what you ought
day."
to do is send her that movie, A Boy and His Dog.
Oh, see, she had
That's
a
what
she
I'm talking about, man. Have the dog go out and hunt humans for her and have a little
yeah.
cannibalism. Yeah, there it is.
She actually died for 28 minutes,
Oh,
and she has some brain problems because there was no oxygen to her brain.
yeah.
But you know what? She had a weird near-death experience. She said that she was actually on a spaceship, and they told her she didn't have to come back here, but she insisted on coming back because of her dogs.
You know, I've written in chapters. I'm writing a book called The Non-Local Mind in a Holographic Universe. It's How to Change the Movie. And chapter 7 is called Time Travel and the True Nature of Cavitation. And in that 3 of 10 parts, I talk about what happens at the moment and the moment just after death with consciousness as a physicist. And I can tell you this, you have a choice at the moment of death. It's written and described in the Bordeaux Thadal, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It's written up clear that at the moment of death, you have a choice. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and others suggest that the tunnel of light that everybody describes with your dog wagging and wanting to come back because of your animals sounds to me like a birth canal. And the second choice is what the Buddhists called getting off the wheel, which was the blue light.
Getting off the wheel means not having to come back here, right?
That's correct. There are saints in history. If you want to study the Bibles, as I have, where I actually went out and studied Old Hebrew and Greek so I could do my own translations. And then I spent 6 years with Gershom Scholem trying to be a Hermetic Kabbalist and doing my own translations. And in the Torah, it will say that at any given moment, there are 50 living masters, Christs, if you will, on earth, but only 2 of them are for men. That means that it's a Param saint or a Sadhguru or a both, like Sharan Singh or something like that out of Satmat. Pir Vilayat Khan was 4th plane and wouldn't qualify. But there are supposedly, according to the old Bible, 50 living saints on earth at any given moment on earth. And these are supposed, what defines a saint is somewhat a definitions. Doesn't need anything with a face or grandparents. Let's say they meditate 10% of their life, 2.5 hours a day. They're in training the mind. No sex out of wedlock. And some like Janes will sweep insects like ants out of their path so they're not taking any kind of higher life form. Now, a saint, by definition, like God is that which cannot be known. You have definitions. Okay, a saint is somebody that also chooses the moment of his death. And so Sharan Singh, my teacher, chose who he was going to succeed, passed the baton to him, and then died. He chose his moment of death. That is a very rare but part of my definition of what would constitute a holy man. Somebody that came back for mankind, not for themselves.
So why are we on the wheel, Dr. Rick?
What's that?
Why are we on the wheel? Is there a purpose for us to be on the wheel and keep coming back?
Yeah, you got to learn your lesson 20 or 30 times so you get it right. How's that sound? Time is not real, which means that this place is an illusion. And the movie that I was going to talk about, Glass, for example, are the three guys in an insane asylum that think they're comic book heroes, superheroes. This is where we're going with consciousness, where we can do things. One of the things I trained SEALs was how to change their perception of time with breath control. And what happened next is our martial arts became paranormal.
Mm-hmm. So the movie where these guys think they're superheroes, is that their lesson?
Well, watch the movie. You tell me how that works.
All right.
It was a well-crafted movie. The Glass, and before that was Split, and the first one was Unbreakable, where he's the only one that survives the train wreck. That's Bruce Willis, and he meets Mr. Glass, and that's the third movie. In the first movie, there's three movies in the series called Unbreakable, Split, and Glass, and it's about man moving to the next level of evolution in terms of having comic book-like powers.
So when we have to come back, if we didn't learn our lesson, like,
yeah,
are you speaking like, all right, say we're a bad person, a rapist, a murderer, blah blah blah, and then you come back and you're the same way again. That means you haven't learned anything, right? And you got to keep coming back.
That's
coming
right.
Back.
And so, but I'm going to say something. At the moment of death, there is a 5-gram weight loss in everybody. And that weight loss has been described in anesthesiology as microtubules with structured water in it. And 5 grams is enough to account for a supercomputer that would account for all of your past, present, and future lives, plural.
Speaking of structured water, I wanted to talk to you about structured water tonight.
Sure.
Okay, structured water, we can make it several different ways. Make it go counterclockwise.
It depends on which hemisphere you're in, because the water becomes destructured because of Coriolis forces in the northern hemisphere, where everything in water, for example, goes down the drain counterclockwise. That means if you're pouring water into a glass, if just by simply pouring the water into the glass clockwise will restructure a minimum of 60% of it right out of the gate. And what that does is that's H3O2. That's Jerry Pollack's works at the University of Washington School of Medicine, Department of Anesthesiology. He was my lead in 1970. And Jerry is still there doing his exclusions on water, or the 4th phase of water is the title of his book if you want more information. But it's been written about through history with Schomburger, others. Willard, old man Willard water out of your area. All of this has to do with water and its different forms. And water has memory. That means that when it touches something, it changes. That's why the leading edge on a wave is moving faster than the wave itself. And actually, that process is a system of cold fusion that is now being studied at MIT.
And water does have memory, because I have seen studies where people have, they actually put water in this college and 2 different places, and everybody would walk by and tell it that they hated it and it was ugly and blah, 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 and that water turned black. Then they had another section
Yeah,
where they had
motos.
water.
That's a motos
Right.
work. Yeah, yeah.
Right,
We're on
and they
thoughts
they kept telling
and
the water
discussion.
they loved it, it was beautiful, and sending it love, and that water was crystal clear and
Well,
beautiful
of course,
looking, and
you gotta not. You can't rule out the fact that your upper brain, your so-called mind, is there to make all your beliefs true. I wouldn't have
I
seen it if I
always
hadn't
tell my
believed it.
water I love it.
Yeah.
I bless my water, I I
But
I
here's
pray
the
over it
deal:
when I
if you drink water at room temperature and you put an electrolyte in it, something like lemon, um, now that and it's at room temperature, not cold, that water will go directly into the body rather than the urine. You
I
have access
always
to that
drink
water.
room temperature, I never drink cold water. My
Well,
water's
that's
always room
one of the
temperature.
problems that most people do is that they drink cold water, and then of course
Yes,
they're dehydrated even though they're drinking lots of
right.
water.
Okay, I have a question. There's a stone that I have found out called shungite. Are you
Shungite is a
familiar?
form of carbon. Yeah.
Yes, they say that if you put a
I
stone, a
know. Yeah.
shungite
Okay. We'll go
stone
there.
in
That's
water,
what shungite is from Russia, and you can make shungite material from a campfire.
oh, really?
Shungite is a C60 carbon. Carbon has the ability to bond to itself, which means it's as you know in the periodic chart. It's one of the carbon is the element that allows it. The way it's structured will allow it to bond to itself to form one atom. Think molecules going forever. You know, as many as carbon as you want in a nanotube. It'll be one molecule thick, which is actually approximately 1.4 nanometers. Now, if you have 60 molecules, it will be able to form a complete ball. It will roll into itself and complete a ball called a Buckyball. And it does that with 60 molecules or 120 molecules. The more common one is the C60 that they put in olive oil. And what they're doing is putting exclusion zone water, H3O2, just one single molecule inside so that that water molecule is completely surrounded by a carbon atoms, and 60 of them that will enclose one single water molecule because you can get it between the bonds. And that was fed, that's called fullerene water, and that was fed in Ukraine and then later another study in Russia and now in France. They gave lethal doses of radiation to rats and fed it fullerene waters, and it isolated, and 95% of the rats that were given lethal doses survived because it's an antioxidant that goes in and isolates. It wraps
So do
itself
you
down
think,
in tubes.
right, so Dr. Richard, with the 5G coming out, do you think that it would be beneficial for people to start using the shungite stone with the purifying the water?
No, shungite is a fat. You can make your own shungite, is what I'm trying to say.
Uh,
It's not, shungite is a natural source of buckyballs in Russia.
well, I also heard that it
They
will
call it shungite,
repel
but
the
you can make it.
electromagnetic field.
That's great. It does a bunch of things, okay, because of its unusual structure to it. Now, guess what? If you, instead of putting exclusion zone inside that buckyball, if you put deuterium inside it, you now have a neutron fullerene fusion bomb, something that might have been deployed at Building 7 at 9/11. And let me say this, that takes a teleportation laser, Lockheed. It takes an ignition system, Carnegie Mellon. And it takes a neutron bomb that came from Mossad. That is, I don't think the Mossad did it. I think they gave us the technology, and that technology is now being used as a tactical nuke everywhere in Gaza, in Russia. Russia has it now. It's being deployed everywhere. And the precision is at 1.4 nanometers. In other words, when that deuterium goes critical into a muon and the rest of it, which, by the way, is the elementary particle I predicted in high school. That's why old man DuPont was interested. I was the one that proposed the existence of a muon with tachyon factory even before Yukawa in Japan, who got a Nobel Prize. That's why I'm military. I'm on the edge, always there. The muon, that is a more elementary particle. Back when I was doing the math on that, was about the same time Fortran was being used at NASA by those black ladies. I was doing code. A muon is a more elementary particle and composes a muon with a neutron, and that's what you're doing. You're breaking a neutron down into a muon and several tachyons and some other things. I don't want to get technical, but it's simple. What I'm trying to tell you is we see it everywhere in nature, and now we have the possibility of ignition, because what you do is you need a teleportation laser to go inside the buckyball to detonate the deuterium, and the buckyball is strong enough to contain it. That's how the neutron bomb works. It's 1.4 nanometers. Imagine the precision. They can put nanofibers in an aircraft, and there's no forensics.
Okay.
That's what's happening.
Since you mentioned aircrafts, have you heard about all the airplanes that have been crashing? Do you have a theory on that?
Boeing, yeah, Boeing.
No, not just Boeing. There are a lot of
that.
Cessnas. There was like 5 or 6 Cessnas in the last few days too.
Yeah, I don't know if they're related or coincidence. Basically, I personally don't believe in coincidences. So I don't know. I can speculate, but I don't know. I don't know. And here's the bad news. We may never really know.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I with everything that's going on, like you say, the Earth's expanding. We've tilted. They've had to change the North and South Pole is
well, that's a magnetic field. That's different now.
Right. Now I'm wondering if the magnetic field is affecting the plane somehow.
Well, of course it is. How could it not? The Aurora Borealis is moving down into Michigan. You can see it. You know?
Oh, I don't plan on ever flying again.
Well, all things considered, flying is a lot safer than driving in an automobile. And when you're out there on a bicycle, you're just asking for it, especially with the me-firsters driving in the way they are, everybody uptight.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy.
It is.
You have to be extremely careful now. People are going nuts and going over the edge. Road rage is everywhere.
Yes.
I've never seen anything like it. It's just like people losing control. Now, is that astrology? Well, yeah, biorhythms and, bandwidth. We have a bunch of different cycles in our body, and sometimes we're, what is it, Annie Lennox says, I just can't, I forgets myself. I'm out of touch. There's things going on that we're not consciously aware of that are affecting everything. Our diet, our digestion, our sleep, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I
right
agree.
Now,
everybody that I know are having problems staying asleep. I mean,
well,
it's like
something else is going on. What kind of dreams are you having? Are you monitoring your dreams? I would.
Yes, I'm having bizarre dreams. Very bizarre
dreams. Yeah, they're different kinds. That's my mentor was Dr. Stanley Krippner. He was the one that mentored me, introduced me to Ed Mitchell so I could be at Mission Control, and do the ESP studies with James Urtak. But I can tell you, he wrote a book called Dream Telepathy, and I am here to tell you, this is some dreams, not all dreams, some dreams are where you connect with the source, the archetypal part of man. And that's why while intellectual property and I was there first kind of thing is all a kind of hooey in that, in my opinion, there's no original thought. I am you, you are me, and I am the walrus. We are all, we're all connected. And time is the element that we measure things by, like time and space. But now, we now believe that time and space aren't even real. You know, in all physics, you start with definitions and assume truths before you do anything else. And a definition might be, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Now, is that true or not true? And when the good Reverend Jackson looks over that fence over there and he says to his congregation, is that fence white or is that fence black? The correct answer is yes, because you can't see the other side of the fence by definition, and you're making an assumption.
Yeah, that's true.
And so nothing is real. And they say, is the earth flat or is it round? Well, if you presume tunneling, event horizons, and precursor waves that come out of solid-state physics, well, now, with certain mathematics, I can prove the earth's flat. What that does is it opens certain doors of reality and it closes other ones. And it doesn't account for data that we say when you take a balloon up and you can see the Earth from space. Now,
so basically, we create our own reality, correct?
There you go. Now, by George, I think she's got it. The reigning thing.
I know, yes. That's why I like to live in La La Land.
Well, it isn't La La Land if you do it with intent. Now, your magic is the art of changing consciousness at will.
That's why I don't understand why so many people, when they feel down, run to a doctor and say, I need a pill to make me feel better, when they can make themselves feel better with their own consciousness.
Well, then that's what's called placebo. And it used to be with allotropic medicine, placebo accounted for 10% of all healing. Today, with microdosing of psilocybin mushroom, where you're supposedly healing yourself on a spiritual level, and it proliferates down into the physical as a metaphor, now placebo may account for as much as 60% of all healing. And the more you train your mind and the discipline of taking psyche into matter, you take charge of your own movie. And that's when a Buddhist is ready to move to the next level of consciousness, or the so-called blue light. And that's all written in the Bordeaux Thedal. And I'm going to guess that crashed spaceship on the other side of the moon is probably Buddhist. Previous epoch. Well,
so if we sit there and we take doom and gloom every day, like say we're on the internet and we're watching YouTube videos and we're watching all this mayhem and murder, and all we're doing is infecting our mind, where
with a certain kind of mindset of realities. Yes.
So we should be watching stuff that's uplifting and
Well, according to GARP, you should. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I try to, but it's hard for me when I'm out there trying to report what's going on in the world, so how do I balance
you want to have
myself?
some escape. Get away from it all. I'm watching one right now on Netflix. It's wonderful. It's a little group of vignettes called Love, Death, and Robots. It's wonderful. It's refreshing. And you can see the different cultural variations. They had one that was an anime, manga. I did a manga comic for Japan on structured water, a little teardrop, a little water girl, and I get Aqua Girl is what she's called in the comic book, and the darker side of Snow White, that kind of thing. And I'm understanding now that you need movies are what make things real. Like you watch Star Trek and a replicator, and now we have a 3D printer. And
Right.
so I'm doing a thing for Netflix called the Domes of Mars, where we print a geodesic dome underground with vertical aquaculture systems in it, using hemp that we grow and manure, Martian, to bind it. And it's stronger than cement, even when it's hit with magnesium, making porous concrete. Where once you can see it in your mind's eye, that's what makes it real. Not the physics. Physics comes and goes. The laws changed. There's no such thing as gravity. The earth sucks. Well, I'm just kidding, but it's a metaphor. We create our own realities with the doors of perception and what's available to us and what is not, and why I would say a Buddhist can be a Christian, but a Christian can't be a Buddhist. Your worldviews are what open and close doors, and the broader worldviews, you have more access to the world.
Absolutely. I always say have an open mind and look at everything, examine everything. Don't let someone control your mind or tell you what you can believe and not believe or think or not think. As soon as you give away your mind, you give away everything.
I'm afraid that that's what TV did. How did the CIA put it? Oh, yeah. Mind control? No. We don't need mind control. We have TV.
Absolutely. I'm very selective with what I watch on TV, and I like to watch a lot of comedy myself. I love Third Rock from the Sun. Does that make me a kook?
Third Rock from the Sun? Mark for Mark? Nanu.
Yeah.
Hey. I'll tell you, that's a cocaine high. Listen, you have to go into the whole thing with your eyes wide closed. Because, your eyes are not, they're not sensing reality, they're filtering it.
Yeah.
And so right out of the gate, you're only getting a limited view of reality. Imagine what it would be like to see from the eye of an eagle.
Well, that's pretty much what you can do with a drone, don't you think?
Well, that's pretty much what the shaman does, don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, then there it is. You can do it with drugs. You can do it with rock and roll. And, drugs, sex, and rock and roll. Those are the three things you can do it with. Sex magic, tantric yoga. Yeah.
That's all
the
we
Masonic
need.
secret. The thought that occurs at the moment of climax happens.
Well,
That's how psyche is brought into matter. In a holographic system, you have the physical plane. We'll call that IQ. And the next plane above that is the emotional plane, how you feel about the physical plane. It's more information, and why we give honor to EQ.
It's absolutely, I can tell you create your own reality. And I'll give you an example. There was a serial killer that was killing all these women, except this one woman he didn't kill because she refused to believe that he was going to kill her. And so she bonded with him and sent him love, and he didn't kill her.
Yeah, that's a creepy form of love. I can remember Tina Turner when she said, "What's love got to do with it?" But okay.
No, but
I'm
she
a
figured
realist, man. I get it. That's kind of creepy to bond with someone that's a psychopath.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you do what you got to do when you know your
Well,
life's
then
on the
that's the
line.
movie Glass. The three of them are considered psychopathic killers, and they're locked up in an insane asylum. And are we the good heroes or are we the bad guys?
Oh.
And the right answer is yes,
Whenever I
because
get stumped, I'm never going to say they
yeah,
are, they
no,
are. I'm just going to
it's
say
good,
yes.
yes, because in fact, that's what makes man man. No matter what he does, there's always two edges to his sword. As
So,
a metaphor, he polarizes God, breaks them into two pieces, absolutes, and why the more Eastern form of the yin within the yang in terms of working with preferences rather than absolutes. And you prefer this over that, so it's always in reference to something else.
I believe that we can attract too with our thoughts. Like if we want to attract somebody, we can concentrate on attracting a soulmate or a friend or
Or a
having a
teacher
good
or a
day.
lover or
Right,
whatever. Yes, yes.
right. You know, it's
But
so weird because I
here's the
do
point that's
that.
most important. It's about the moment. It's not about thinking in the future of I'm going towards something
It's
or
about the
I'm
moment.
from the past, I'm coming from something. It's the moment of gee whiz.
You know,
And
I've
that's where
actually, I have
that place,
actually
by the
done
way,
that,
that's
Dr. Rick. I use my essential oils
yep.
and I'll put my essential oil on and go to the grocery store with intent of everybody's going to like me, and I have a blast. The people at the deli laugh and joke with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
People come
But
up
that's
and
because
ask
for
me.
the first time you smell good. everybody likes Bad Baby. She smells good. I'm just kidding.
You know, it's weird because the store, I just went the other day and the store was packed and this guy kept coming over and asking me all these questions. And I thought, what does he think? I'm a professional shopper?
Well, here's the thing. I had a sixth grader once ask me, if pigs are so smart, how come parrots can talk and pigs can't? And the way I responded to the kid was, there are many different ways of communication. And when a pig wants its way, it somehow manages to make it real clear what it wants to have happen. And guess what else? Bird brain comes to mind. Just because you can speak doesn't mean you're saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I've
it goes
even
downhill from
actually
there.
had dogs come over and they just put their head up against me like, oh, I love you, you know.
Because they are working with odoriferous molecules. That's your scent thing. It goes, the odor goes directly into the brain. It's not filtered.
Because see,
And so,
our Lowe's allows, it's pet friendly, allows dogs. And I was in there getting some wood, and all of a sudden I felt something against my leg, and this guy standing back there said, I had nothing to do with it. And I looked down, and he had a Doberman, and the dog was hugging me. And he goes,
yeah,
wow, he really
they
likes
can
you.
tell. They can smell you. That's another sense that is outlined in this trilogy: Glass, Split, and Unbreakable. It's it's all in metaphor. The senses and odoriferous molecules are, we're constantly communicating from a lot of different stages, including body movement, eye movement, release of molecules under the opportune glands or your armpits, etc. So when I tried to answer to the kid about communication, it happens on a lot of different levels. That's why Darshan, eyeball to eyeball, is far better than telephone audio like we're doing right now. And this is better than texting, which is the way I used to teach online when I was at Harvard. Back then, we didn't have audio or video. What we had was texting. That was the first thing. They called them chat rooms at AOL. When PC Link changed and became AOL, and we were working out of the well, out of Berkeley, using Humboldt State, an interactive educational system. I had 11 years I taught metaphysics at Harvard. Doing that, that's all 14 8-week courses just in audiobooks I have out now. We converted all of those, found a good robotic voice that read the chat room with questions and answers. And that's one of the things I'm doing now, trying to move from physics into metaphysics, where meta means beyond, so that your worldview is a broader base than just the physical plane, which is measured in space-time. And what I was going to say about that moment place, in Jungian psychotherapy, that place is called sacred from the profane. Are we there yet?
I don't think so.
Exactly. Well, it's
some of us maybe
where you're in the flow. Yeah.
So at night when we go to sleep and we have say an outer body experience, what are we doing then?
You're leaving your body with an astral cord. That's where the Egyptians had the same concept, where they distinguished between the Ba and the Ka, the soul and spirit within matter. Stag in the unicorn, in the forest goes. That's written up in a book I've written called The Modern Alchemist, Personal Transformation Process. It's a metaphor in terms of how you categorize things that are sacred and things that are profane, and how to go from the profane into the sacred. And when you go into the sacred, everything is timeless.
Well, I've had the experience. I have had the experience.
You need to dialogue that. Yeah, you should keep a diary. Do you do that? Do you keep a diary?
No, I'm too busy to keep a diary.
Yeah, you can't. You can't be too busy. It's Ira Progoff, Honest Journaling, and Stephen Kaplan Williams, and the Jungian.
So what you're telling me is when I wake up, I should write down all my dreams and that?
Well, try to, and start to get in the habit of when you have a synchronistic moment where something extremely important has meaning to you. When something like that happens, like there are 5 things going on, and all of a sudden this is important. That is how a future timeline is talking to your moment.
Well, one thing that I've been noticing in the last few weeks is babies are all smiling at me. I mean, I was sitting at the light and I looked over.
I probably laughed too. They're laughing. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
It was funny when I was in the store. I had a pain in my back and I put my head to the side and went, ah, and I heard someone go, ah, behind me, and it was a baby.
He was trying to mimic you. He laughed. Yeah.
Yes, he was laughing at me.
Look at that silly adult. She doesn't get it yet. That's that baby, until she's 4 years old, is way, way smarter. Something awful happens between age 4 and 7 where we're socialized and we lose a good hunk of awareness. I was blessed. I am a 4-year-old that never became 7. I nod, I drool, I bob, and I'm a functioning savant that somehow had enough people hit me over the head so I can fake it and look normal.
Well, that's all I'm doing. I'm fluffing, buffing through life.
Hey, well, you asked me about those knuckles I dragged. You know, I'm Bob. I don't know if you watch videos of me, but when I'm talking like I am, I'm animated.
Oh
I
yeah, I've
am.
watched
There's
videos
a
of
word
you.
for that, by the way. It's called being inflamed. A man on fire. When you are closer to purpose, while you're actually here, not intent, which is basically what happens at the end of the day, but you're closer to purpose, you become inflamed. There's nothing that can stop you. It's just like your energy is unbounded. You're a man on fire,
Right.
and that
So when
is sacred.
when all hell breaks loose, if this earthquake hits, uh, our biggest thing then is that we should keep our energy field up, and our
You're going to need lots of rest. You're going to need entertainment. I have a whole list of things you need. You're going to need heat. You know, you're going to
yeah.
need, you're going to need to be able to, you're going to need food. You're going to need water. You're going to need entertainment.
Most of all, you're going to need love. You're going to need to love one another.
Well,
Because
that's,
if there's fighting and hate, no one's going to survive. Am I correct?
So the Greek had three words for love. They had eros, philo, and agape. And I would like to add a fourth word for love, which Aleister Crowley said was telema or thelema, the love of will, your purpose here. When it's a type of when you discover why and what you should be doing. There's do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is a law. Love under will. If it detracts you from your path is why you're here. That's what you do. You don't let anything. Yeah, your telema. That was will, and that's the fourth word that I would add is love. It's the highest form of love there is, and that means that, like with women and men and marriage and all of that, love comes and goes, but friendships are the highest form of love there is. Just because you no longer can live with a woman does not mean you don't still care for her or him. It is friendship first, and then the love, and then as we change, it's the two basic paths to God on the tree of life, from the male and female side, the outer part. The two paths that go up to Kether are the hermit and the lovers. And that means you either do it androgynously or you have a reflected partner into the external physical world, representing the masculine part of your inner self. And people change. We all change. It's not his fault. It's not your fault. As you change, that love comes and goes because that person may no longer reflect that inner image of the masculine self, but you still care for him. And so that's where I make a distinction between love in terms of friendships and your relationship things. And your best friends, usually you like them because of their faults, not in spite of it.
Exactly.
As I've gotten all these years, I'm beginning to slowly get myself and understand why I do what I do, reason, and that's where before you can love anybody else, you have to love yourself.
Yes.
And I'm not talking about narcissism, because
so many people have self-hate. I'm not good enough. I'm not fat.
Well, that's right,
and
they say it.
Right.
And that's the other part of it. Never say it. Even if it's true, don't say it, because that's going from your mouth as a feedback system into your ears. You're trying to hypnotize yourself. You're trying to force a belief. No ho ringy keel, no ho ring. I mean, you're banging your head.
Right.
And so
Right.
what you want to do is realize, and that's why diaries are how you discover how to talk to yourself, your inner self. And everybody's different. And I'm going to say that there are probably as many religions out there as there are human beings. And really, why you go to church is for fellowship, to help you reinforce a value you would like to integrate more into your own being.
Well, you've convinced me. I'm going to go out and get myself a diary and start. I
I
will
think you
start.
should. It's just, I do it online now. I don't do cursive anymore. I scroll. I went through mechanical drawing and had beautiful handwriting, and now I can hardly read my own writing anymore. It's awful. You get old and in a hurry. Well, senile. But, I actually keep one on the computer now. When I have random thoughts or I find a link that really turned me on, besides posting it on Facebook or whatever, I will actually keep a diary and make a few notes on it. And then when you go back and read it 2 or 3 years later, you will not believe the energy it ties the entire past.
Right.
Okay, that's why you do it.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting about love. If you go and look at my Facebook page, I'm always telling everybody, all my friends, how much I love them. I always post a lot of postings about love. And when I first got on Facebook, I said, I don't want to friend anybody. I'll just put out there how I feel in my heart. And do you know, people kept friending me, asking me to friend. Do you know, I got over 3,000 friends? And all I did was post about love.
I'm a little more guy kind of guy, so I'm probably working with one chakra down from that one. You know how I'm just kidding. Yeah, now you got the big picture. I didn't say it either. I just tried to imply it. I am trying to make myself more pure, and I have discovered that there are more important things than just my heart. My gut. My gut is me outside space-time. If I listen to my gut, my instincts, everything goes right. Everything always works out. Always. I have never not been disappointed. Ever. Now, values change. It used to be I wanted money, and I would get money, but not exactly the way I wanted it. For example, you do a little candle burning ritual, a little witchcraft thing, and you want $50,000, and a truck runs over me, and I get it in insurance from my medical bills.
Well, that's a little bit going the hard way to get the money.
In magic, what you do is you select things that are important to you, that it doesn't matter what they cost, like spirituality. Doesn't matter what it's going to cost me to get that. I'll pay the piper. I've got my coins in my pocket for both eyes, for the ferry boat, the ferryman, and I'm ready to go. And what I'm doing is everything that I do to change reality, my reality, is not to make myself more comfortable, but to become more spiritual. And then it doesn't matter what happens.
What do you think about the YouTube videos they have out there? The law of attraction, listen to this vibration and you'll attract wealth. And what do you think about all that?
That's been a message throughout our histories. In every generation, there's somebody that writes about that. And how did Fernando Lamas put it as Billy Crystal? Look marvelous. I don't know who you are. And what you're trying to do is get along in what we call the spell of invisibility, where they don't notice you or don't notice. For me, I have discovered that the best way for me to do radio with people like you is to be as transparent as I possibly can. No agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That allows you to see me more clearly, and I'm just a grumpy old man.
No, you're a grumpy baby.
yeah, grumpy baby. Thank you. I needed that. I'm a grumpy baby turning into a grumpy old man. There it is, just like in the movies. And
Well, you know what
how
they
did he
say,
put
when
it
you
in
get
grumpy
older, you
old man?
revert back to
Oh, when
childhood.
Sophia Loren walked in, holy moly! I miss good comedy.
Well, I love comedy. Nanu Nanu.
Nanu, there it is. Mark for Mark. Yeah.
Oh, I miss him. He's so, I miss Robin Williams. He was a funny
He
dude.
was a drug addict, just like we all are, or I have been in my past. I've explored those. I did the original when I was working for the military. I did telepathy, ketamine, and BZ studies at the University of Washington. BZ was Jacob Slider drug. That was a gas that is really, you want to talk about DOM and STP and how it's different than lysergic acid diethylamide. I'll tell you, the trips and doors those opened. And ketamine, they've now legalized ketamine for nasal, for depression. And I don't think anybody realizes just exactly how dangerous that drug is. It's worse than opiates.
That's the one that they just came out with, where it's in a nasal
just
spray,
last
right?
week. Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
Yeah, I saw that, and then I saw all the side effects on it, because it can actually make you have suicidal thoughts.
Well, it's Negadev and Trout. Trout was editor of Ethnogen Review, and Tom Lytle, Psychedelic Monographs and Essays, Shulgin, all these writers have talked about ketamine. And Negadev talks about the sick people. Where I first encountered ketamine was when Dr. Moore was in the lab next to me doing ketamine studies, when his wife, Marcia Moore, had written a book on astrology with Llewellyn or something. It was hanging out with a UFO group up and out of Arlington, Wayne Aho and George Adamski. And she got a hold of ketamine so that they could experiment in their little UFO group for a close encounter. And they brought me in when they found her severed head in the Florida Everglades 2 hours before she was dead in Seattle. Now, that's how I got involved with ketamine.
Whoa.
In a science study with the military. How is this possible? Well, somebody's obviously made a mistake, or something's going on here that we don't understand the rules. And basically, these are neurotransmitters that open doors just like LSD does. Whenever you take a mind alterant, you are performing an act of magic. Magic is the art of changing consciousness at will, and set and setting are critical if you're going to be able to assimilate it. In Leary's book, Psychedelic, The Varieties of Psychedelic Experience, okay, that book that he did with Metzger and what's his face, he says in there that the Buddhists had 4 reasons for getting high, and only one of them was for escape or recreation.
Huh.
What are the other 3 purposes? Well, one is it jumpstarts your brain into its own production. Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, is a toxin. And when you take that, the body freaks out and immediately produces a huge amount of the neurotransmitter called lysergic acid amide. And what happens next is that LSD is broken down and in salts in your urine within 20 minutes of ingestion, and the next 20 hours of hallucinations are from your own brain chemistry. Now imagine being able to do that at will with your mind's eye, like biofeedback. That's what I'm experimenting with now as a system of magic that will lead to the next evolution in man's consciousness, where at will I can have the strength of 10 men like a termite.
Wow. Well,
that's where we're going. And that's what I'm writing about now. And it's exciting. I'm just a lead scout. I know that I don't know, but I remember when Timothy Leary, I was part of that experiment in 1964 with all those geniuses. There was, a bunch of different real famous kids. What they did before it was illegal, Jack Sarfatti, others, they made a list of geniuses to see what would happen if they gave them LSD. And I remember I was 20 years old. Larry came out to Seattle, talked to my mom, then went to Pullman, where I was doing undergraduate work in physics, and talked to Professor Reagan. Professor Riggins was my professor there in physics, and none of us, this is 1964, nobody had ever heard of LSD. Pot, reefer madness, cooling, and I agreed to do this, and I'm up at Deception Pass at Hurricane Ridge, up in the north end of Washington State, looking 2,000 feet straight down into Puget Sound off of Hurricane Ridge, a big bridge there, and the water's boiling back colors, and Larry leaned over and he said, "Wouldn't it be neat to jump?" And what happened next is that I changed. And since that moment, everything that I've ever done in my studies have dealt with the study and use of altered states as tools in a toolbox. And that, ma'am, is magic by any other name. And that is now why groups in physics are really interested. Can you do that with a soldier where he can have the strength of 10? Yeah, you bet you're
could we
interested
repel
in that.
bullets? Could we repel bullets? Could we, move
I'm
our
going to
bodies
suggest
fast enough to?
that where we're going to go, almost anything you could imagine possible is probable. That
So
was
you're
Merlin.
talking the Matrix.
There it is. Merlin said it to Arthur in a book by T.H. White. He said, anything not specifically forbidden is mandatory. That means if it's possible, you can count on it.
Well, I'm going to start concentrating harder now.
Well, it's why all the saints in history have stressed the importance of meditation, training the mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people just don't want you to meditate. I mean,
it's okay. It's okay, because some of those people aren't human. I think we've been invaded.
I was wondering why, because I'll give you an example. There was a guy that a long time ago that came on one of my calls, and he said he was sitting in an open field meditating, and then all of a sudden all these black helicopters were flying around him. The cops pulled up, wanted to know what he was doing. He said, "I'm just sitting here meditating." And I thought, well, why would that draw such attention? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Ascension, I posted something on Facebook today on Ascension. Gigi had said something, and to my money, she was right on the mark the way she describes 5-space. The ability, we have 4-space, including time, 5-space. The brain is actually a 4-dimensional hologram of 5-space. It's an amorphous semiconductor, which means it's constantly in change, which means that if you could go to different places in the brain, you could change the movie.
Really?
That's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to navigate that and write about it and leave some footprints. How about this title? This is a new book that's about to be released by me. The Magical and Ritual Use of Metaphor, Archetypal Gods in Daily Living. Oh, and guess what? It has 22 chapters.
Wow. Well,
You
you know,
say man is either possessed in Jungian psychotherapy, imaginal psychology. He's either possessed, he's got one single story going on, one God, or he's got more than one God going on, more than one story going on. Probably complexed. You're complexed or possessed. Now, if you're complexed and you can identify using the tarot which stories are going on, each story, like Psyche at the Well of Souls, has an ending. And if you don't like that ending, how it's going to end, that means you can change the movie using techniques in magic called pathworking. And that is what I'm writing about now as a physicist.
Well, I do believe we can create our own reality and change the way we feel, so like I
Yeah,
said,
like depression.
if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
stay depressed, you'll stay depressed because you're wallowing in it.
Exactly.
If you want to stay happy,
So there's
you can
another
stay
third
happy.
baby. That'll be whiny baby. You're bad, baby. Bad to the bone. And I'm grumpy. And we'll have a whiny.
Okay. All right.
I'm just kidding. I'm just messing. Yeah, but I'd like to have some fun with this. There's no reason why we can't have some fun.
You know what? I love fun. I really do. I love to laugh. I love to have a good time. I love to be happy around people. I just don't like to be sad or argue or have a bad time. I mean, that was my past. I've evolved above that now.
Yeah, well, good luck. I'm going to watch how this is all going to play when the United States government tries to give the state of California to China to cover some of our national debt.
Yeah.
That's going to happen.
And here's something that I find that does make me sad, is that I do know what's coming to this country. I do know that from all my research and the people that I've interviewed,
sure.
that we have devastation coming. And when people are posting on Facebook that they got a new baby or a new grandbaby, I find myself having a hard time to say congratulations or be happy because I know that child is in for a world of crap.
Yeah, but here you got to go back to the Beatles. What did he say? Everything.
All you need is love.
Yeah, well, no, and then after that, everything works out in the end. And if things aren't working out, it's not yet the end.
That's true. That's true. I just wish I could just. I just wish I could just kick evil off this planet because I'm sick of it.
Well, here's the problem. That's what man does. He polarizes everything. And for everything that's good, there's the other side of the sword. It isn't God that's evil. It's man polarizing God, like the fence. Is it white or is it black? You have a choice.
Well, to me, it seems like people are becoming more ignorant lately. I don't know.
A dumbing down of America? Could it be? Say, yeah, yes. That's why I love Saturday Night Live. Even the newer stuff is still pretty good. It's not like it was. I miss Fridays. And yes, the educational systems are in shambles. And
oh, Saturday Night Live, I've actually used some of their skits at my work. And the lady that used to work with me used to crack up at some of the stuff I did. I'll give you an example. There was this color guy that came in, and I was a die setter for Lionel trains, and if the blade that cleared the ink across the die came loose, it would catch on the die and the whole machine would jump. And I told this guy, I said, if the machine starts jumping, just hit the power button, call me. I go, don't mess around. Don't stick your hand in there because it can chop your fingers off. So this guy was so scared of this machine, Dr. Rick. So I went and loosened up the blade because Betty told, Betty told
Just
me,
to limber him up a little bit. Give
yeah,
him a little
just so his
visual.
machine would
You're
start
naughty.
jumping. Now listen.
Bad baby. Now I get why your brother called you that. That's pretty straight up.
Okay, so I loosened up the blade a little bit during break so that it would start catching, his machine would start jumping to see him freak out. So I come over there and he goes, oh my God, my machine. I hit the power button. I go, what happened? And he goes, it just started jumping. And Betty's over there looking at me like, I know you're messing with him, right? And I look down there and I go, I start talking to the die. I go, you rascally little wabbit, you, I'm gonna get you. So I said, just wait here. I'm going to go get my tool bag and I'll come back. So he's all freaking out standing there. And I came back and I went, look out. And I ducked and he ducked. I go, here it comes again. And I ducked again. He started crawling under the line. I saw that on Saturday Night Live. The night before I came home and this guy walked into the drugstore on Saturday Night Live and the druggist was standing back there and he said, look out, he ducked, and the guy ducked. And I wanted to see if he'd do it, and he did. And
I know.
Betty,
That was Martin Short playing a druggist. Or was it Martin
yes.
Short? Yes, I remember. I can handle it.
Yeah, and he kept going, here it comes again. You remember that skit, eh?
Yeah, that's a long time ago in a faraway universe.
Yes.
Wild and crazy guys. There it is.
Yes, wild and crazy guys. But yeah, I do that stuff at work, and then finally he said, what was it? Shark attack. I
know.
Just
it's all done with mirrors. But and humor, by the way, remember when I talked about the tree of life and the two paths that go to God, the hermit and the lovers?
Yeah.
Well, the one that crosses them to make a triangle, that is humor. And it goes right through the missing Sephiroth in the middle of the abyss. It is above union with self, or Tippereth. And it's humor that connects male and female parts of yourself in the way you want to, envision or, see who you are as masculine, feminine, or something, Malcolm, somewhere in the middle. I think that education is, I think it's terrible what's happening now. I live in Josephine County here in Oregon, and our graduation level is 73%. I can't believe it. When I went to high school, everybody graduated, everybody.
Yeah.
And the scholarship of it, I'm 75, the scholarship was exceptional. I felt we were
Yeah, but
not
don't you think it
ahead
has
of
to
some
do with
countries.
them? They're drugging all the children. They're telling them.
Well, that's it. Lithium, putting them on antipsychotics. How's that work?
Yeah, I mean they're not even giving their minds a chance to develop, and they're saying, here, take these drugs. You're too jittery. You won't sit still. Blah blah blah. They even control what they can write and what they can think.
I know.
I mean, come on. Don't even take me there. It'd take me 3 hours.
So what's happening now is that I think our single most important natural resource is our children. And
Absolutely.
That's where our primary budgets should be put into in America, not taxes for the city and railroad.
Dr. Rick, parents got to quit listening. Just because this guy's got a white coat on and he went to med school, he isn't God over your life. He doesn't know
Well, no,
everything.
and
Just
medicine's
because
actually
he
broken
tells
now.
you do this to your
Allotropic
kid.
medicine does not address the illness, it addresses symptoms. Newsflash. I've got degrees in medicine, and I'm here to tell you it doesn't, homeopathic medicine is kind of like working with structured water. Rustum Roy's work is that when you put a single drop of something, who knows what it is, wormwood, for example, it will deworm you better than pumping your system full of anti-worm food.
Right. You
And
know,
so,
I also heard that you should play classical music to water. Is that a good thing?
well, what makes it classical? Why is it called classical? It's timeless.
Well,
What makes it? It isn't a baroque. It isn't, fluff music. What makes something classical music? Now, I have worked at the Brit here in Oregon. The Brit is an open, out in the redwoods, open theater, the only one of its kind in the United States where we have classical music as part of our system of things. And we have an orchestra of 247 different musicians, of which the lead violin has been lead violin 27 years. And what the new conductor did last year is he put the entire orchestra around the rim of Crater Lake and brought in Indian chant music. And that was classical music.
I always thought it was the vibration.
It has to do, well, Star Wars, dun 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 dun. Oh, that's that music that used for Indiana Jones. It has become classical. It is all ages. It's outside of time, and while there are different periods where the classical music is more with violins as opposed to cello, that is, classical music is something that endures and is outside music frames like the 60s and the 70s and rap music and rock and roll.
So if I want to become super bad baby and put my cape on, I should be chanting that, dun 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 dun.
Yes, please. Is that and bring handcuffs? Yes, please. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, don't you just love talking to me?
Yes.
I'm just as screwy Louie as you are.
Yeah, very sick man. How do they put it in Saturday Night Live? Oh, yes. What the hell is that? Dang, what is that? Wow, I don't know. Wow, what is that?
Well, you'll love this. I was at the church, over at the church where they were giving out free food and that, and I was tired, so I sat down on the pew there in the corner, and the girl that was sitting there with me, I said, want to see me blow everybody's mind? And she goes, why? And I go, just watch. And everybody that went by, I said, you dropped your pocket. And they'd stop and look like, what did I? Your pocket, you dropped it. They'd actually feel their pants to see if their pocket
I know. It's sleight of mind as opposed to sleight of hand.
Oh, but I like having fun. Then I would just tease them and say, I just want to tell you I love you.
It's important to do that and to acknowledge that need in all of us to reduce the stress.
Yeah. And that's how I was at work when I would mess with people like that, or pull little jokes on them and everything. And do you know, when I left there, they shut the whole plant down. Actually, the workers did this because the supervisor said, we'll lose our job if we do this. And they wanted to do a party for me, and it was only supposed to be a half an hour during lunch, and it went on 2.5 hours.
Nice.
It
And
was.
you did, what was it, model trains is what you did, Lionel?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I put the
that
print on
sounds
the
very
side of the
cool.
trains.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so
that
they
used
never
to
did this
be a
for
big hobby.
anybody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They never did this for anybody, Dr. Rick. And I walked out of there with 2 pickup trucks full of gifts. And they said, "We want everybody to
Loot.
take lunch at the same time." They wanted everyone, and my supervisor said, "We can't do that because track would go at one time and paint." And they said, "Well, listen, either we all go to lunch at the same time so that we can see her open her gifts, or we just all won't come into work and we'll go to the bar and have her party."
Yeah. Drink at home. Yeah, really.
Yeah. So he let him do it, but we had to keep it a secret. But yeah, and
I'm
he
going
said
to have
40
to wind
minutes.
down shortly. I just thought I'd let you know I have to get ready for something I have to do at 9, and so I just need a few minutes before, and I just wanted to do a red flag to remind you that I can't stay full to 9 p.m.
Okay, sweetie. So why don't you, while we're winding down, why don't
Okay.
you tell everybody where they can get your
Oh, you mean
books?
now I'm going to be whiny baby and say I'm a starving artist, and my I have written a whole bunch of books, and I'm a small bookstore publisher which does not sell anything on Amazon anymore. I'm at war with Amazon, and so if you want to buy any of my books, you go to my website and I will autograph everything that comes out of my home. And you go to richardalanmiller.com, ALAN, richardalanmiller.com. I have a bookstore. Now, my audiobooks have gigabytes of information beyond the talks that I gave, because I used old, rare books like Book of Enoch or Ruth when I'm quoting from the Bibles. And what I've done is I've given you those old books that I referenced when I did my talks so that you can go to those books and see my resources and come up with your own plans, your own ideas or interpretation rather than mine. And so on my website, you'll notice a free download library. What I'm doing there is each week I have over 6,000 old rare manuscripts, like the Secret Traditions of the Yazidi came out of Rome. That's a book that started the Stargate movement. It was in 1919 when Joseph Isaiah wrote that. He's a Jesuit at the Vatican, and he wrote about the Yazidi, which are up in northern Iraq, that had an artifact. And that's where the military first came to be aware of the fact there might be something in the catacombs up there in the northern part of Iraq. That, by the way, is one of the only reasons we've ever been interested in Iraq. Iran is a different animal. Iraq had artifacts, and when the first Bush went in, he didn't find it. And that's why the second Bush, when he invaded Iraq, right after the invasion, he got on board that ship with his military and all his dress and all that. He said, the war's over, we got it. What they did is they had tomography and were able to go down 60, almost, way down into the earth, and they found the Stargate. And in the Yazidis book, they talk about a second Stargate, just like in the movies. And that's the last thing I want to point out. Movies are the way the mass public gets how a change might actually work, like the domes of Mars. Once you've seen it in a movie, that's what makes it happen. That's the magic of Hollywood.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of what they did on Coast to Coast, where they would do consciousness experiments to try to make it rain. They tell everybody concentrate on raining. So I do believe that a lot of the stuff they put in the movies is they're trying to put it into your consciousness to bring this about.
A group meant that concept, like a replicator that is now a 3D printer. Yes. And so that's one of the reasons why I was always drawn to sci-fi, because it gave me the edge of where we're going. And yeah, you know, and if are demons real? Are aliens real? The correct response on that is, how could they not be?
Yeah.
They're in our
I
imagination.
agree.
Once they're there, that's that. That makes it real. Is it black goo or is it gray? I don't know. The correct answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Or actually, from the movie Hot Fuzz, yarp. Yarp.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rick, for coming out tonight and sharing with us. It was a riot.
You know, I love being with you. You're always fun. No,
Why,
you
thank
are.
you.
You're always fun. And everything. Is Mad Painter still your producer? Are you still working with him?
No, no.
I miss him too. His artwork, I don't know if you've seen his artwork lately. It's just incredible.
No. Are you talking about Robert?
Yeah. Mad
Yeah.
Painter. A mad painter, yes.
No, after his mother passed away,
Oh, yeah.
you know, he said he didn't want to do shows with me anymore, and you know, he won't even answer my emails, so I don't know. You know,
I'm close to him. I'll inquire. I'll make some broad sweeps. I really missed him working with you.
Yeah, I miss him too. You know, I sent him some songs, telling him that I loved him and that he was my friend, and he don't even answer. So I figure I must be bothering him. So I just kind of.
No. Usually, people that are depressed, actually, we need to go out of our way and not intervene so much. You know, if they want to go kill themselves, then they do that. But it's friendships.
Yeah. Well,
you know?
maybe I'll shoot him another email, then I'll get off my butt again.
Yeah. And I'll nudge him from my end, and we'll make him grumpy.
Yeah. Tell him I love him and I miss him. Tell him his bad girl misses him. He always called me his bad girl.
His bad girl, huh? You're growing up a little bit, going into your teens. Yeah. How did they put it in the Addams Family? Be afraid. Be very afraid. Nice
okay,
talking
Dr. Rick. Thank you, dear. You have a blessed night, and you hang in there. And
I promise.
The whole world,
it's always a pleasure, Mom. Always.
Well, if the whole world falls apart before we schedule you again, just know that I'll be thinking of you guys.
Well, if it does, I will be opening my doors to bunkers for survivors. Give me a grip.
Okay.
Nice talking with you, Mom.
I appreciate that. Okay. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Dr. Richard Allen Miller. It's always a delight to have him on. I just love having him on. He cracks me up. Anyways, next week, we are going to be bringing back Robert Evans, and he has finished reading Stitchen's book, and we are going to go over, he's got a bunch of notes that he has quoted, and he is going to go over the book with us and reads a little bit of what he has learned about Stitchen's work. So I'm looking forward to going over that, and I want you all to have a safe and blessed weekend and a safe and blessed week. And remember, Bad Baby loves you.